There are a lot of different analytics tools that you can use to work with event data, to understand how website behavior works, to understand marketing performance, to understand product performance. All these different tools have different kind of ways how you can work with this. And because of that, they naturally serve different kind of audiences. Google Analytics, the old one, the universal one, was a great entry tool for a lot of people who are not working with data or with analytics on a daily basis. So for them, it's interesting to do it 1 or 2 times a month. Every time when they want to understand something which is happening on the website, within the marketing campaigns and so on, how the performance looks like. The old Google Analytics made it really easy for these people to get started. But now everyone had to switch to GA4. And we will not go into this whole scenario, what has happened, what didn't really work. But what's not so easy anymore is for people who don't work with the data on a daily basis to just go into the system and to find the things that are possible for them. One way to solve this is to have sophisticated people within your company or within your teams to prepare these entry points for the marketing, product growth, and sales teams, for them to make the journey for them super effective, so that in the end, when on this one day where they check things, they immediately find everything, they can take the insights, and they go away and they're happy with the results. And this is always like a natural step, also like in the old GA setups, where you introduce some configuration, some customization. And I see this trend with GA4 a lot more. Because the standard reports that you now get in GA4 don't serve this purpose anymore to give easy access. And so we have to create this. And there are different ways how people trying to solve this. And today I want to show you a different way that you maybe never really thought about, but is extremely powerful, especially to build really good custom entry reports for the marketing, sales, growth, and product teams. And because today we take our GA4 data and we bring it into Mixpanel. And this sounds a little bit crazy, but follow me along this journey to see this is a straightforward setup and it can unlock really interesting use cases for your company. This video is sponsored by Mixpanel. Mixpanel has a new way to do product analytics with your warehouse data. You can connect Mixpanel to your data warehouse, and then you can run all the product analytics investigations and all the product analytics deep dives on top of your data warehouse data with clean, prepared, and high quality data. Check out the link in the description to learn more about the offering. I'm using it and I'm extremely happy to have this new kind of setup for product analytics because it unlocks so many more use cases on top of much better data than before. Okay, so let's get started. Today we even work with real data. So real data, not let's say some synthetic data that looks real data, which I usually use. Because here I have one of my websites where I host all my free courses on deepskydata.com. And as you can see here, it's a classic course-based website, so you can watch all these different kind of videos here. And so I track it with, I don't really track it because I use the data. I mostly track it because I still want to see how the data arrives in GA4 and how I can work with that. And I barely use the data in here. This is Google Analytics 4, as you might know. And of course, I worked with GA for over, I don't know, 10, 15 years. I usually find around here as well, even like when it's working a little bit differently. But I like custom setups. And yes, I can customize a little bit more in GA4, but definitely not to the degree that I want to customize my things. Naturally, what I do, what a lot of people do today, is I sync up the data into BigQuery. Here we are in BigQuery, and as you can see here, so this, if you sync your GA4 data into BigQuery, you will have a similar kind of data set like this, starting with analytics, and then have your, I don't know what this is, account, property ID, whatever. And within that, you will have all your different kind of event tables, which in the end are partitioned by date. And of course, we have the user tables here as well. This is like the kind of data that you might already know. So let's have a quick look to see the full mess of GA4 raw data again. GA4, because I think, like they work closely with the BigQuery team, so they thought, okay, we can use all the crazy stuff that is within BigQuery. And so they are the famous example for nested record set, as you can see here. So this is a nested set. So this is actually one row, but we have some nested data in here, which is always huge fun to untangle it, not because it's super complicated, but it's just because you never do it anywhere else. So I at least always have to look up again, okay, how do I do it? Because it's not that every day I work with GA4 data and no one else is nesting data. Okay, so here you can see normal GA4 data, pretty wide data set. We want to work with this. In theory, we could already just take this data and just sync it up into Mixpanel, so we might even work without, let's say, doing some preparation work, especially like if we don't really want to have a lot of properties. If we're just, for example, interested in the event name, so then we have everything. We have a timestamp here, we have an event name, so we could sync this up into Mixpanel already. But we want to invest a little bit of work to bring everything in a better shape, and also like to get some values from here, like page location and some campaign data, because to enrich our data set, that in the end we have a richer data set within Mixpanel. But the nice thing is it's based on the GA4 data. So if you still have people working directly in GA4, and we pull the data here, the data then still matches with the data that we now will prepare to get into Mixpanel. And so this at least makes a lot of things much easier, because you will not have a specific event, for example, for session start in GA4 and then a different one in Mixpanel, which always drives everyone crazy. With that, it makes it definitely better to use the same data structure or the same data set that we have in GA4. And now we bring it to Mixpanel. But before, as I said, before we do this, we do a little bit of data modeling, because data modeling is usually a lot of fun. To some degree, it really is. But I show you definitely at least one essential shortcut. As you can see here, so this is a classic DBT model. So if you watch this because you saw GA4 and you never heard of DBT before, what is DBT? DBT is a SQL orchestration engine, or a platform that allows you to transform data in planned, structured steps so that you don't really break things, and so you have everything into one place. You can do the same thing with just normal queries on top of BigQuery as well, because as you will see here in a second, we just write SQL queries. And we just tell DBT in which kind of order we want to run these SQL queries. So maybe you want to run this query first to create a new table, then run a second query that works on this new table to do stuff. And so since we do it a lot of times, then something like DBT helps. I know in the BigQuery or Google Analytics 4 community, they use a lot Dataform, which you have here as well. So here we have Dataform. Dataform is a Google Cloud native product, so it only works in the Google Cloud and it only works with BigQuery, which would be okay, a GA4 use case. And everything what we do today, you can just apply in Dataform as well. I do it in DBT because DBT is a more agnostic platform, so I am not limited to just use BigQuery. For example, I could start out in BigQuery, but could also then maybe pull the data from BigQuery into Snowflake or Databricks, or wherever I want to use my data, and run it there, because DBT works there as well. So this is the reason why we use DBT here. And if you worked with DBT before, this kind of structure should be familiar for you. If you haven't worked with it, doesn't matter. It's still like the thing that I show you will make sense to you. One thing that we do, and I told you we have one shortcut, we're using a package. What is a package? A package in DBT is maybe like an additional program, additional function. Maybe we could call it like this. And so what we are using is we're using the DBT GA4 package. They are still contributing to this, so at least like we can see, okay, there were some changes in the last 4 months. At least this is something 2 months ago, we had some fixes in there. At least when you use different kind of projects, always make sure that they are still maintained to some degree. And here you can also see 2 weeks we had the latest release. That's great. This is my first check before I use something. Now it's 2 years old and no one's actually contributing to it anymore. Now here's still like a lot of contribution happening. And so the nice thing is why I use this is I mean, this mostly like this nasty things. I could build a lot of stuff that I use here. I could build on my own, and I did it in the past already. But I thought, especially like for this kind of video, I want to introduce to this one because it takes a lot of work away. So what it does, it flattens the model to access like the common events and event parameters in a normal way. So flatten means is like it basically gets rid of this nested structure to make it easier to work with the data. This is one of the reasons why I like to work with them. For example, they create a lot of different kind of tables for me. So this would be my only counter argument against this package. I don't use most of them, so I would use maybe 2 or 3 of them. So I get a lot of stuff that I actually don't really need. So I would love to have a configuration where I can just say, okay, please generate me these 2. Then it would be even better, but it's fine. So in the end, I think you have to check your, let's say, query costs and also like your performance. If you really run on a very big data set, then it might become a problem that you run things that you might not need. But maybe you need them, maybe you want to use more of them. So they are definitely all useful. So it's just I usually don't work with it because I usually prepare the data a little bit different than they do. They have a little bit weird context of fact and dimensional tables, which are not really fact and dimensional tables. Anyway, so I will show you. I get started with this one. I will show you how to build on top of that. But it's definitely a great starting point, and I definitely recommend to check it out if you use dbt, to not invest, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks to do all this unnesting, making sure that you have the right kind of stuff on your own, which if you haven't done it before is definitely painful because just trust me, it's painful. Use this package and save yourself the work. If you really want to understand how to model the GA4 data in a format and also make the right decisions with it, then do it yourself, but you can then still use this package, for example, to cross-check how they made specific kind of decisions to model things. Always a good starting point. So this is something which I use. So we come back. So here I use it as a package, which means like all the different kind of tables that I just showed you will be generated when I run dbt. When we have a quick look into this, here's my GA4 to event data model. And here you can see, so there's a lot of stuff that they basically have generated for me. For example, they have this base GA4 event table where a lot of stuff is already flattened out. They keep the nested source information, so don't be surprised that it still looks like this. But you can now find most of the values down here, so you can easily access them. So that makes it nice. These are the different kind of models that it automatically creates when you just install the package and run dbt for the first time. And I created my models on top of that. As said, I didn't really do crazy stuff here. What I did is I just created these 6 models. There are different ways how I could do this. What I could have done is I could take the same approach to what GA4 does, and so put all the events into one table, have an atomic event table. Usually, like when I want to sync up data into Mixpanel, I like to have a little bit more structure, and so I create one table per event. And the reason for this is it gives me more flexibility to maybe make a decision which kind of events I want to push up. So I get more control over the volume that I give into Mixpanel. The second benefit is I can use the normal Mixpanel sync. I made some videos already about what different kind of synchronizations you can do within Mixpanel. And the normal sync is just taking all new data into Mixpanel every time it runs. So it runs every night, for example. Then it just takes the new rows that have been added. And for example, if I have one event table with all the events and I introduce a new event because I model a new event. So I show you how I model events here as well. So then, for example, the old values will not be imported because the synchronization just looks for the new records. If I just introduce a new table and add the new table in there, I also get all the historic events. So this is the reason why I do this. And final benefit is it prevents me for going crazy with a lot of different kind of events, because no person on this planet wants to create 100 of these models to represent 100 different kind of events. I know there are still people doing this outside, but if you do this, please always be aware, you don't have to do this. So less events usually are the better approach, which is a different topic for a different kind of video. Okay, what did I do? Let's start with page viewed. Page viewed is already within the data. As you can see here, we have an event name called page view, and so we're building on top of that. And so what we do is, in the end, we just formatting and reorganizing the existing data in a different kind of form. On the one hand, we pick a timestamp. We basically make it as a proper timestamp because I think it's just an integer here. And we create timestamp field because this is essential if you want to work with event data. Then, of course, like we have a unique identifier, then we have the event name, which in this case is page viewed. And then, of course, like we have the user pseudo ID, and we use this as our user ID. This is like the common identifier that stitches all the events together if we want to do some funnel analysis. And then the major thing what we do is like we create a JSON object. And so JSON object is a nested object within a row. Okay, he's doing it again. Yeah, but I use a JSON object, which is usually like a little bit easier, at least to build and to access, at least in my experience. And we're doing it for the reason because like when we sync the data up into Mixpanel, Mixpanel is expecting us to provide all the properties in a JSON column. We're doing this to make the import into Mixpanel as smooth as possible, but in the end, like you could even still work with this kind of data structure even on, but I usually recommend to do this as a last step. This all creates all the different kind of properties that I can later use then to break down all the different kind of analysis. So if I'm interested to understand my page views a little bit better, I can break it down by country, by region, by what was the first or initial user campaign, and then of course the page path, the level 1, the level 2, the level 3, and so on. We have a lot of different things. We do one thing, so we have this 2 levels of campaign information. We have first user campaign and we have session campaign. And the big difference is this is in the end like what's in GA4, what was the initial campaign that brought this user to our website, the first recorded touch point for this ID. So when someone deletes the cookies, of course, like this gets away as well. Session is what was the last touch point that they used. If you think in attribution terms, first touch point, last touch point. When we want to have both information, the GA4 package creates the session information into a separate table, which is like here, session traffic sources. So this is like why we do a left join to get this data available here as well. This is how we get the data in there. As you can see here, what the package already does is it splits already up the events into one table per event type. And so here, for example, we have a page view table. And so this is the reason why I don't have to, for example, add a where statement to filter down for page views. We already have it in there. And so this, like the GA4 package does it automatically. Let's look at something else. The nice thing, what I can do now is this is something that comes out of the box just because I have the GA4 tracking script running on my website. But maybe I want to qualify the page views a little bit more. So for example, here on the website, we have what we have here. This is a course viewed event for me. So someone comes on this page, checks out a different kind of course that I have. And so I could say, hey, actually, this is a course viewed event. I could implement this with GA4, so to fire, let's say, a custom event here. But because we are modeling data, we can just do it in our data model. And so what I did is I picked the data that I already have from page viewed. So this data, which I have created this model. And so this is what I mean with references, where DBT is really nice. So I created this table, and then I create a new table. I'm referencing the table that I just created before. And so I create a reference, and by that, DBT knows, okay, I have to create this table first until I do this one, which sounds trivial, but I can tell you in bigger setups, it's a huge pain if you don't have this built in and you have to figure it out yourself. What we do here is we take all the fields that we already have defined, but then we filter it down because like we are just interested in the ones that are on the course page. And so we do it here. So with JSON extract scalar, for example, we access the page path value that we had before here. Then here, for example, we just filter down. We are just interested in the ones that start with courses. We just start with courses because this is in the URL. And then we want to make sure, because let's say my URLs, so I have the same URLs for the course overview page, and then there are lessons within the course, and they also have the same argument, or they start in the same way in the page path. And so I have to make sure that in the end we just have 2 forward slashes. Then I know, okay, it's a course page, and if it has 3, it's on a lesson page. So Sounds a bit tricky, but in the end, it's just I'm checking the page path and I'm just checking for which kind of pattern it has. And based on that, I can say, okay, when these two criteria are true, it's actually a course viewed page. And so I just created a new event, course viewed, just based on the page view events that I already have. And so with the lessons, I do the same structure. And here I just say, okay, if it has 3 forward slashes, then it's a lesson page. And I can say, okay, lesson has been viewed. And so I do a similar thing with sign up started. So if someone is on auth sign up started, here it's obvious because I just have one page path where you can start the sign up. Here, for example, like if someone is on this page, we can say, okay, this person has started the sign up. So that's nice. This is a possibility what we have. So we don't even have to track new events. We can just model them in here. Okay, so this is what we do. The final step, what I do is I create another user table because I can also add user properties directly into Mixpanel as well to enrich everything. This makes the analysis in Mixpanel a lot more powerful because then, for example, like the country of the user that I just have tracked for the event. If I have some events where, for example, this country is not present, when I have it on the user level, I can always access this as a filter or as a breakdown because the user information is stored across all the events that I've tracked for this user. And so it's available for me for every kind of analysis. So if country is not tracked for, let's say, a specific kind of event, I can still filter and break down things because it's on the user level. So this is why I create a second table for just the users, and we will export it into Mixpanel as well. That's what we did. Definitely not super complicated to work on top of the GA4 data. This, I think it took me 30 minutes to build all these things, so it's pretty straightforward to build it. Okay, so next step, we need to get it into Mixpanel. We have a new Mixpanel project which is called GA4 demo. You ask yourself, okay, how can I get the data in there? If you go here, there you have the option project settings, and in project settings, I have these two entries down here. And so the one is warehouse sources. As you can see here, I already connected my BigQuery instance. I don't show it. I have another video where I show it, but it's extremely straightforward. So you, in the end, get 2 commands that you would run here in the cloud shell. And once you have run it, it's already connected, and that's it. So it's something that is pretty quick, and you cannot really do things wrong, so it's pretty straightforward. The next thing what we have to do is, of course, we have to get the data in there. We want to connect an event table or different kind of event table, so this is what we created, and so let's get started. We take this again, then we have our demo set. Exactly, we take this one, and then let's start with course viewed. And now comes the mapping. So we have to tell Mixpanel which columns they should pick for their information. So they already identify something. So for example, they identify event name because we know call it event name. So they could find it. So we have course viewed here. Then it already has picked the timestamp column. Then we have to tell, okay, what is the user ID? So this is this one. Then if we would have a device ID, then we could pick it here, which we don't. And then the final mapping is like we take the JSON properties and we just map it to our properties, which we have here, which we have defined before. And with that, then we have everything. So then we can just define the synchronization mode. So we can do append. Append is like the standard one, which I usually always recommend to do. So append means it's like it runs one time, so it runs, no, we can define how often it runs. So it runs, here in this case, it would run every hour, and then we would check for new rows in our table, and then just import the new rows into Mixpanel. And I can do it on an hourly base, on a daily, and on a weekly base. Most likely, I would say on a daily basis, usually like the best default. But usually the data model runs at night, and so then you have the new data, and so then you can sync it up. But if, for example, it becomes more important, of course, like you can run the data model every hour, and then after that, you can basically just import it into Mixpanel. Okay. I will just do one time because for the sake of the demo, I just want to import it one time. I don't want to have it running all the time. Let me quickly create this synchronization. Great. And so we have our first event into Mixpanel. So I will now quickly add the other ones as well. And so we do fast forward, and then we can start to work with the data. As you can see, now we have all the events in here. They are already loaded. And just to see, so this usually doesn't really take long. So you can see here 21 seconds to load this data. And this is now the full backfill. To be fair, it's not a very big data set, but even bigger data sets usually don't really take long to get imported. Finally, you want to import the user table, which is a different option here. So you have to make sure that you use this one. And then we do the same thing. We check for the right data set. Then we check for the right table, which in our case should be users. And then let's say the options are a little bit different. Of course, like we are just interested in the distinct ID, which is the user ID. And then we add the mapping. Exactly, we have the properties. So again, here you would choose append again, as explained before. I just do a one-time sync because I just need it for the demonstration aspects. So user table successfully created, now runs the import. We can start to work with the data. And I mean, there are different ways how we can approach that. We can start with the starter board. And so the starter board is something that Mixpanel introduced a while ago. Is the same kind of standard quick start that you might already know from GA4. And so it already gives you some interesting things. So unfortunately didn't had any kind of traffic today, so we cannot see, but it's also because I just ran the import for yesterday's data. So naturally I cannot get anything here. If, for example, I would now run it every day or every hour, then I would see data in here as well. Then you have this. But the nice thing is these are all customizable reports that you can create. So you can create as many starter boards as you want. And this is like what I always liked to work with a tool like Mixpanel over a tool like GA4. I can basically prepare a set for all the different kind of business teams that works for them, that works for our business. There's definitely a benefit in standard reports. It's nice to get started with this for the first time. The first week is great in standard reports. The second week already feels painful because like you always have these things where you think, it would be really nicer when we show this metric here. And so this is what I want to show you now, how we can approach that. Let's get started with some basic ones. So of course, everyone is interested in, we want to see some sessions. So we have session end, session start. These are standard Mixpanel events. And they usually really work well when I use the Mixpanel SDK. Since we import the GA4 data, we should definitely use the one that we have created. So this is session started. And now we can see, okay, these are all the different kinds of sessions that has been started. So of course, I might be also interested in how many people actually checked out the course pages. And so now we can see this here. This already can be a good starting point for people to start. So for example, I could say, hey, I want to have this on a longer time scale, make it for 6 months. And of course, I'm either interested in a monthly view or let's say I go on a weekly one. And I can quickly save that as, so I create a new marketing starter, save new board, and then I call this one sessions and courses. So marketing will immediately see there seems to be a lot of traffic immediately going to the course viewed pages. So it might be that some courses maybe have been announced at this kind of date, which I know because I announced some courses on this date. So you can see like a lot of traffic is directly going there. So marketing already gets some insights from that. What they can then also do is marketing can take the next step and can say, yeah, that's interesting to see this on a timeline, but this is already a funnel. So why don't we create a funnel? And yes, of course, we can do that. Let's pick here the funnel steps. And so now we have a funnel. So we have session started, and then we can see, okay, from people who start a session, 50% end up on a course page, which might be good or maybe not so good. I don't know. We can even take a step further. We can say, okay, how many people end up on a lesson page? So we can do that. Okay, that many people. Or then we can even add like how many people sign up. It would be interesting. Then you can start to optimize. So for example, you don't really have to be on a lesson viewed page to sign up. So at the moment with this funnel, we require that we just have people who are on lesson viewed pages that sign up. So we can also now, let's say, remove this and can just say, okay, checked out. And so we have more signups now in here. And so this is really nice. So this is really nice for marketing already to get started. And then we can easily build out new entry points for the marketing team, for the product team to get started to work with the GA4 data actually, but now we are Mixpanel, and so we can use the more advanced possibilities in Mixpanel to create these things. So one thing that I always like to create, and so this is something which I usually create for marketing teams. So I create a, let's say, more like a table report for them, just like to understand, for example, what are different campaigns are performing for. So I built a classic campaign reporting. For example, we could take the default channel grouping. So default channel grouping is the one that you already know from GA4 as well. So we have this as well. So because the GA4 package in dbt is generating this, so it doesn't come out of the box when you work with the raw data, but now we have a channel report, and now we can see, okay, many of these have started a session, how many have viewed a course, how many have started a sign up. When you ask yourself, okay, what about some conversion rates? Then let's add some conversion rates. We can build our own formulas here. I think to some degree this is also possible in GA4, but definitely not so straightforward. We take C, which is sign up started, and then we divide it by session started, and this basically gives us the total conversion rate. And we can just add it like this. And now we have a conversion rate for all the different kind of channels that are coming in, as we can see here. Yeah. Referrals are always great, so we should get more referrals. Yeah, which is usually not so scalable. So paid search, as you can see here, naturally doesn't perform so well. What we could also do is, just to show you at least a glance of advanced stuff, what you could do is, so we can build a different breakdown. So what we could do is we can include attribution models. We can go into computed, and then we go attributed by. And then, for example, we can say, okay, we are interested in channel grouping. Let's say we want to attribute by channel grouping. And as you can see here, there are two new options that we have. So first of all, we can define the look back window. So we can also now go for 90 days. It always depends on how long you have your cookies in there. But let's say, okay, in my case, 30 days might be a little bit too small. So I want to go longer. So I can change this here. And what I can do is, so for example, I could say sign up started. Right now, as you can see here, we do it by a last touch model. What I could do is, because I want to compare it with the first touch model, I could go in here and can go in sign up started. And just let's move it in here. And then I pick, as you can see, I can pick between different kind of attribution models. So I go for first touch. We can compare two attribution models. So this one is like last touch, this one is first touch. We can now really immediately see, okay, when we go from first touch to last touch, what does change? There are obvious changes. Referral seems to be a lot stronger in last touch than in first touch. And so we should find out what is in the end driving the people finally over where they are not so strong in getting started, where direct, for example, is a lot stronger in getting started. This can give us the possibility to create really powerful reports for the marketing team, where they can, in one report, immediately understand different kind of things. To quickly recap, why would you push GA4 data into Mixpanel? In the end, there are different reasons for me why I would do it. First of all, as an analyst, I get a lot more control about how I present the data to my different stakeholders. In Mixpanel, I can create all these different kind of reports, and then I can put them on my boards that I create in the way that I want. I'm not happy with this one, so I can do it like this. This is extremely flexible, as you can see here. So I can build starting points for other teams in the way that they can really work with this. When I work as an analyst, the most important thing for me is I want to do it as customer-centric as possible. So I ask the marketing team, actually, what do you want to have? And of course, like they might tell, so with some back and forth, we will figure out what they really need and what really helps them. But here I actually can build the things that they need. And I can build the entry levels for them to really get started. Because, as I said, these are entry levels for me. So marketing team can go in here and can say, great, this is a great first funnel. So what we really want to learn is, okay, when we break this down by, let's say, we want to really understand, for example, how are different devices comparing in these kind of funnels. Because as we can see here, oh, look, iOS is pretty much stronger to view any courses. Then, yeah, Linux, oh, this is not really good. Not so good. So maybe we have really like an issue here. This is more a case for product. But as you can see here, so you enable this. You give people a standard report and then you enable this kind of thing. This was the part that was always missing from me in GA4. This step to say, I built a custom setup for my company, for the different kind of teams, and make the path to the next question and to get an answer yourself as easy as possible. And I think this is the reason why it's worth to think about. We keep the GA4 data. We might still want it because like we want to create some audience to push it up into Google Ads, which by the way is also possible for Mixpanel. But anyway, we want to keep it because there are still 2-3 people who love GA4. But we use the same data and we put it into Mixpanel, and we use Mixpanel now as the custom optimized solution for all the other kind of business teams. So this is why we take all the effort to build all these things. I hope this was useful. Let me know if you have any kind of questions, so add them to the comments. If you like the video, and make sure to subscribe to the channel because there are more videos like this are coming up, and so then you don't miss them. Okay, see you in the next video.